lots of other issues of the week. For another perspective, I want to bring in the Shadow Education Minister, Julian Leeser. Welcome to the program.
Good to be with you, PK.
In Australian schools, because you're Shadow Education Minister, multiculturalism is taught. I know, because I have children in school. I think you do too.
Yes.
It's a sort of foundational thing that's taught about Australia, that we're a multicultural nation. Should that continue?
Yes, it should. I've always been a believer in the tripartite story of Australia that was championed by people like Noel Pearson, that we've got an Indigenous heritage, a British foundation and a multicultural character. I don't think that should change. Why
shouldn't it change? Because Pauline Hanson said we should have a monoculture. She defines it today she defined it by saying the Socceroos are monocultural. Are they?
I don't know what she means about that. I mean, you know, surfy culture in Australia is different to farmer culture, which is different to veterans culture, which is different to, you know, suburban culture. We have a range of different cultures here, but we are united by values. It's the values that are key and important, and those values are things like a commitment to democracy, to the rule of law, to the equality of men and women. They are some of the foundational values of Australia, and we need to hold tight to those values. But it doesn't matter, so far as I'm concerned, where a person was born, what race they are, what religion they are. If they've got a commitment to those values, they're part of the Australian story.
So when monoculturalism is talked about, do you hear it as basically talking about one Anglo-Saxon culture? Is that what people are really talking about here?
Well, I don't know what's meant by that term. I know what I think the Australian story is about. It's about the Indigenous heritage, the British foundation and the multicultural character. And we should celebrate and teach all three of those aspects of our history and be proud of each of those aspects of our history. That's what I want to see. And the more that our curriculum and our history is bolstering those foundations, and I think we do need to be proud, particularly of the British Foundation, because I think sometimes we don't always emphasise that enough. We are serving the country well.
Why is this happening now, in your view? Why is this such... I mean, obviously Pauline Hanson's given her speech, but why are we even having this discussion on something that has been bipartisan for so long? Yesterday, Angus Taylor couldn't even really commit to multiculturalism.
Well, I think in fairness to Angus, yesterday he said, and it's worthwhile quoting, he said, we can have people from all over the world, of all races and religions in this country, but they must share those core values. I don't know how much simpler it can be than that. That's what we believe in, that's what I've always believed in, that's what I was brought up to believe in, and that's what we'll continue to fight for. I agree with Angus Taylor 100%.
But he wouldn't call that multiculturalism. Why?
Well, that is multiculturalism, when you have people of different races and religions united by a common set of values. That's Australia.
Yeah, but using the language seemed to be difficult. Did that trouble you?
No, because I think he basically articulated the principle that I share. A principle that says it doesn't matter where you've come from, if you sign up to the values, there's a place for you here.
OK, but there did seem to be reluctance to sign on to the word, and that word carries such historic meaning and has been bipartisan for so long. There is a sort of building view that perhaps that's under threat at the moment. Is it?
I don't think it's under threat at all. What we have said is that to make multiculturalism more successful in this country, we need to ensure that people are actually signing up to our values. And sadly, in the last couple of years, we've seen declining social cohesion in this country, because people have thumbed their nose at the law. I mean, we've had protests at the Harbour Bridge and the Opera House where people have burnt Australian flags, where they've had terrorist symbols, where they've held up the pictures of terrorist leaders of countries that attacked our country. That's not contributing to a cohesive Australian society where those shared values are at the forefront. And that's what I think we need to do, is rebolster those shared values.
Angus Taylor said on 2GB today that there's lots you can work with One Nation on, and it's an important thing to do. He put on the record today he's tried to reach out to Pauline Hanson. Do you think there's lots you can work with One Nation on?
My main focus is to work for the Australian people and to try and develop policies that Australians will vote for the Liberal and National parties at the next election. That's my focus every day, and it's my focus on what's good for them, not what's in the best interests of any political party.
Okay. One Nation. Does it worry you to see your political party sort of chasing some of the ideas of One Nation?
Well, we will work with any party in the parliament, because we don't have the numbers in the House at the moment, and if we came to government, you'd love to have the numbers in the Senate, but that's such a rare occurrence in Australian political history that you have to work with other parties from time to time. One Nation has seats in the Senate. You know, we obviously work with them. Sometimes we even work with the Greens from time to time. So, you know, you play on the pitch as you founded, but the important thing is that we stick true to our values of individual freedom and personal responsibility, which are at the core of Liberal Party beliefs.
I spoke to one of your colleagues recently, Paul Scarr, who was, of course, the Shadow Immigration Minister. He said a lot of immigrant groups and refugees are terrified at the moment. Do you agree?
Well, I'm not hearing that. What I'm hearing at the moment is, as I go around my very multicultural electorate, is that you know, the people in the multicultural communities are proud of the way that we've stood up for some of those core Australian values that have been threatened by the declining amount of social cohesion that we've seen in recent years.
And are you comfortable with the policy that you have to be an Australian citizen in order to get Australian welfare?
Well, look, we've been clear in relation to that. It's not going to apply to Medicare. It's not going to apply to anyone who's here currently. It's not going to apply to the childcare subsidy. But we're heading towards $1 trillion of debt, and our job, first and foremost, is to look after Australian citizens. That's what we expect other countries would do. That's what we should do.
Do you agree with your colleague, Andrew Hastie, that you'd rather be taken out in a box than sort of bend the knee to one nation?
My focus is on thinking about what's the best policy for Australians in education and in Indigenous affairs, and trying to win as many votes as possible for the Liberal Party. That's what my focus is. You
said Indigenous affairs. I spoke to Jamie Lowe a little earlier about native title reform. There's a big, you know, report that's been tabled today. You have watched this space for a very long time. A lot of native title holders are worried that they are not getting the benefits that were promised after Mabo was passed. Are you worried about that?
Yeah, look, I think the Future Acts report is going to raise some important issues. Obviously, it's just come out and I haven't had the chance to go through it. But there's a couple of key principles. We want to see more economic development and we want to see less red tape.
And do you think that those things have become big problems for people, Aboriginal people who are like trying to fight for their land rights, and they're kind of stuck in the courts often? It's a very expensive, intractable process.
I think there are problems with the native title process. I mean, we've got 47% of the Australian land mass is covered by native title, and yet Indigenous people are not reaping the economic benefits for that. I think if you unlock those economic benefits, it could have multi-generational transformative opportunities, and it's one of the things that I'm looking into as the Shadow Minister.
Are you worried that at the peak, and you of course broke ranks, you sat on the backbench, you're back now, but of course the referendum, Indigenous affairs was talked about every day because there was an active vote ahead. It seems now to have absolutely fallen off the radar. I don't think that means Indigenous Australians are necessarily, you know, living large though. Their conditions haven't really changed that much. Does that worry you?
I was very critical of the Prime Minister after the referendum of not having actually said, well, there have been some key issues raised, let's crack on and address some of those key issues in a different way. You know, for me, as the Shadow Education Minister and the Shadow Indigenous Affairs Minister, the most important thing that I'm going to focus on is getting Indigenous kids to attend school and to complete school, because that's the best thing that we can do that will be life-changing for the next generation. And I think there should have been a stronger focus, after having raised these issues about Indigenous disadvantage in the referendum, on those issues post-referendum.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks, PK.